You know how much stuff I bought at the grocery store because of that yesterday? I was looking at keep it.
If the Lord's been good to you, stand up on your feet and give him praise. Come on and give him praise. Come on and give him praise. Say
It's the same type situation. It ain't complicated. I just wanted to do it a little bit. Things are just.
I'll sit down when I'm called.
It's not no. Oh, no, what you just did.
What do you want me to do? Oh, okay, that's first.
What we will do is what I want to do is I want to set it up so the staff, if they're questions, if they have specific words, for the babies, we're going to set it up for another time, where we can just have a session just featuring questions or children. If they're like speaking, they're used to seeing families. If they like that. So I want to set you up the same way that I brought back the area and the infectious disease doctor to get the real facts and the history when we bring it up. Because this is going to last. We're going to be doing this for a long time. And we've circled back to the wagons. I want to make the appeal to the nurses to the lawyers. Nurses here, people don't know how to take care of themselves. So everybody praise him. Come on and clap your hands. Come on and do your dance. With the sound of the trumpet. With the psaltery and harp. Come on and praise his name. Come on and praise his name. Come on and praise his name. Come on and praise. There's a reason I called and asked you about you all. The Bible says that everything that has breath, praise the Lord. Some of you have breath in your body, and you know the Lord's so good for you to make it here today. Why does it help us out a little by saying praise? Come on and clap your hands. If you want to stomp your feet, come on and give him glory. Come on and give him honor. Come on and praise his name. Come on and praise his name. Come on and praise him. Come on and praise.
And the questions are the best part. Like when they get to.
So that's the other thing. So I definitely want to know where, I would love to get to build to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But today we'll shoot for 30 minutes. And that's when if we can do it online, I don't know how it happened, but I built, people are following me from all over the country. So if we can start building watch parties where I can FaceTime you in, they're going to show me how to do that online. So when they look tonight, they're going to talk to me about how to do this. Because what's happening is Great Communication owns all the Fox affiliates across the country. And they've been playing my clips across the country. And it's too big of a bite for me. I'm a community medicine, not a people. I got this and I got the communication, but I want them to hear from the experts. There's a big, I want you to, again, there's a big pool of push out there for people with red supply, with donations. And now it's starting to get real. I have leukemia. I have sickle cell. I have cancer. What should I do? How should I take care of myself? So that needs to come from experts.
Absolutely. Well, we're all learning new stuff.
Oh yeah.
I saw patients on my computer today.
I've been doing it for 2 weeks. Really? For 2 weeks I've been doing all virtual visits.
So,
All virtual visits.
so Mark Allen is doing it now.
I've never done that before.
So the ones that, so 35 weeks we need to start doing this. They have to call it. But before 35 weeks, a lot of it we can do everything on the phone. A lot of them we set them up for our program. We have some connected moms, so they have a blood pressure cuff at home. So they take that, it updates to their chart, check all their vitals. And then we,
I want to talk about how
that's just, I did 3 post-op checks that way.
I want to talk about how what my mom was telling me, the difference is, if you notice, we didn't know people got dressed up to go to the doctor. have people with fevers taking the pill
Oh, yeah.
before they went to the doctor.
Oh,
They
yeah.
get messed up. When you see someone laying in their bed, so it's actually a good thing, but we just gotta, it's gonna get wrong.
Before it gets better.
Fresh underwear, but didn't get dressed up.
Yes.
Go get your hair cut. Did you get your hair? Dress your hair. Come here.
Yes, indeed.
When I actually, when I was in Miami, the patients that were taking me to drink, it was always like some of the Haitian kids.
Come on now, if you really know the Lord to be mighty, why don't you stand on your feet and lift your hands and begin to bless God? Come on, just for a few minutes, let's begin to give God what he's doing in this place. Come on, just for a few moments, let's begin to exalt the name of the Lord. Come on, let's begin to magnify him. Come on, let's begin to call him mighty in this place. Anybody know that he's mighty in battle? Has he worked out anything for you? Has he brought you through any situations today? Come on, if he's done those things for you, why don't you lift your voice tonight and go, he's a mighty God. Come on, somebody call him mighty in this place today. Come on, somebody give him glory. Come on, let them hear you on Assembly Avenue. Come on, call him mighty today. He's mighty. Come on, he's a holy God. Come on, he's really good. Now let's take another praise break. Come on, lift your hands and give him glory. Come on, lift your hands and magnify the name of the Lord. Oh Lord, we lift you up. Oh Lord, we give you all the glory. Oh God, we give you all the honor. For if it had not been for you, oh God, where would we be? We'd be like ships that's been tossed and driven. Oh God, we'd be like battered by an angry sea. But since you saw fit to let us make it here today, oh God, we lift our voice and we call you mighty. Oh Lord, we lift you up. Oh Lord, we magnify you. Oh God, we give you glory. Come on and put your fist like this and call him mighty in this place. Hallelujah. 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 Come on, if you really know him to be mighty, why don't you bless his name? Come on, don't patty cake him, but somebody really bless the name of Jesus. Hallelujah.
Where would I be if not for your grace, carrying me in every season? Where would I be if not for your grace? You came to my rescue, and I want to thank you for your grace. Grace like a river. Oh, I encourage you, think about it tonight. Where would I be?
10 seconds.
Not for
Right.
your grace, carrying me.
Well, good evening, brothers and sisters. It's a joy and a privilege to have you back with us again on this Wednesday night. I'm indeed delighted and excited to be able to share with you again on tonight. We're calling this, let me get the right name. We're calling this Facts, Fear, Faith, and Family with Dr. Griggs. There's so many rumors out there, so much gossip out there about this COVID-19. Last week we did this, such a great response that we wanted to come back and do it again tonight. So call your family members, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. Tell them to tune in to www.franklinabc.com on our YouTube, on our Facebook. Last last week, almost 3,000 of you are watching this broadcast. And so we're back again tonight because of how serious this virus is. And we want you to be a part and want you to also get the facts about this COVID-19. Before Dr. Griggs comes with a special guest, one of our own Franklinites, amen, Dr. Veronica Gillespie Bell is a faithful member here at Franklin Avenue Baptist Church, one of the OBGYN here in the city, and she texted me Sunday after hearing the announcement, Pastor, is it okay I can come with Dr. Griggs and his team and just share something with the ladies who are out there who are dealing with pregnancy during this time? And so she's going to come briefly, then I'll come back and I'll introduce Dr. Griggs, and then he'll introduce his staff who's here with tonight, these health professionals who's here tonight. But call someone, tell them to get online and get the facts about COVID-19. Glad that you're here. And so I'm honored to have with us tonight one of our own Franklinites, one of our own members, Dr. Veronica Gillespie Bell, who's going to come right now and address those ladies who are dealing with pregnancy during this time. Also, you can start putting your questions online, and we'll be reading those questions to the doctors, and they will be addressing those questions at the end of their presentation. But up first, Dr. Gillespie Bell. Welcome.
Thank you, Pastor Luter. Good evening, Franklinites. As you've heard, my name is Dr. Veronica Gillespie Bell. I am an OBGYN here in New Orleans at Oshner Baptist. I'm also the medical director with the Louisiana Perinatal Quality Collaborative with the state, working to improve maternal outcomes for the state. And so I did text Pastor Luter because I felt like I needed to give the same message that I'm giving to the state to my own home church. And so that's why I'm here tonight. We know that pregnancy is a time in a woman and a family's life that it brings us so much joy, but it can also be a time that's very, very stressful. And then when you add something like a disaster and COVID-19 on top of that, that can take stress to a whole new level. So as we think about COVID-19, we think about pregnancy, we want to make sure that we're being careful and we want to make sure we're being cautious, but we also don't want to have unnecessary stress. And the best way that we can address that is to dispel our myths. Let's figure out what is fact and figure out how we can move forward. And so tonight I'll be here to answer any questions that you may have about being pregnant during COVID-19, talking about breastfeeding. If you are positive for COVID-19, what does that look like? What does labor and delivery look like? Is that picture different? Just to talk about some of those things around pregnancy, delivery, breastfeeding, and also when you go home with your new family. Dr. Griggs?
And she will be here for all this presentation. So send in your questions to her or to any of the other doctors. Now it's my joy and my privilege to bring back a brother who's been a blessing to us here at FABC since January when he met with our men's ministry. We did this last week with him, and now he's back again because of how critical getting the facts out about this virus. So I'm honored to have, again, with us tonight, Dr. Eric Griggs, and he'll come and introduce his guests.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, and thank you for tuning in. The first thing that I'd like for everyone to do is I want everyone to take a minute to breathe. I want you to relax. Now I want you to check. I want you to check yourself, check your surroundings, check on the people in the room, and know that you're safe and that in the end we're all going to be okay. And then I want you to think about, and I want you to check for your dry cough, fever of 100.4, and then I want you, and shortness of breath. With particular attention to shortness of breath, I want you to remember that. And now I want you to step back. And I want you to take in some of the information that we're about to give you. Things are changing exponentially. Things are moving really fast, and they're changing. Last week we laid the baseline to let you know that the coronavirus is something that we've seen before. The family, 10% of cold viruses are coronaviruses. So we know the family, but we have them two little rogue. There's the little rogue. If you don't know who the rogue cousin is or family member in your family, and if you don't know who it is, it's probably you. That's out in the neighborhood, and we're trying to figure out where it is and how to contain it. There's a basic fact that I want everyone to understand. The virus isn't spreading the virus. It's people that are spreading the virus. I want you to think about that. A virus is it's a bundle of genetic material called RNA that has bad intentions wrapped in protein. It can't survive without you. It has to get into your body, get into your cells, pretend to be you as best it can so you can give it to the next person on a respiratory droplet from what we know, from the short history of what we know that took place in Wuhan, that's the longest history we have, Wuhan, China, we know that it can travel not in the air, but on respiratory droplets as they're projected from your mouth to someone else. On a table, you come right after them, you can pick it up. That's why we're telling you not to touch your face. So it's a virus. Viruses do what viruses do. They have no politics, they have no religion, they have no discretion. This is about all of us on the planet, and right now what we're asking you to do is first get the facts and then stay home so the people on the front line, like my brilliant colleagues and friends, can stay at work. Now, before I introduce my brilliant colleagues and friends, I want you to, if you're on your computer, then I want you to stay tuned. If you're on your phone, buy a computer. If you're doing both or neither, I want you to go to the Google search box, and I want you to go type in CDC Coronavirus Self-Checker. CDC Coronavirus Self-Checker. My colleague, Dr. Derry, and I, a brilliant infectious disease doctor, we discovered it this weekend, and it's an amazing tool to put in your bag to help us in the fight, collectively, in the fight against this coronavirus, this COVID-19. Remember, it's a novel virus. It's never been seen before in humans. So we need everyone to play their part. If you go to the CDC Coronavirus Self-Checker, you'll see a light blue box and follow the instructions. That is, the CDC is the governing body for what we do in this country with respect to, it's the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. They govern what we do here in this country with respect to anything health and prevention related. So that is our playbook. So we want everyone to feel like they're able to do something. We want you to wake up in the morning, we want you to breathe, relax, check for the symptoms of dry cough, fever, and shortness of breath, and then take a step back to start your day. Your other weapon will be a thermometer. We're looking for a fever of the number 100.4. Remember, 100.4. These are additional weapons to put in your tool bag against the fight. Now, I want to dispel a quick myth before we start. The ibuprofen, we're getting a lot of questions about whether or not you can use ibuprofen. That is the danger of rumors and myths. Put the ibuprofen back in your tool bag, and we're going to talk a little bit later about self-care. When you're told to go home and take care of yourself, we've gotten so busy as a society, as a world, we've forgotten how to take care of ourselves, and we've forgotten that we have experts right here amongst us. You're probably at home right now with an expert, like a mom, a grandmother, or someone in the medical profession. Now, with that said, I want to invite my brilliant and amazing co-host last week, Dr. Tammy Singleton, hematology oncologist. There's still a request for blood banks. Tammy, is it safe to be here? Is it safe? Back up. Don't start that spit thing again, Tammy. You know, she keep talking about spitting. Last week she beat me up, y'all. Y'all didn't even come to my defense. I ain't seen nobody say, leave him alone.
It's on. Hello? Yes, see?
There we go.
Yeah, I was
Don't spit. You must have spit
I was
on
starting
it.
with a joke. Like, yeah, don't stand close enough to spit on me. Yeah.
You know that? See? I don't see anybody defending me.
No defense.
So we're having the issue again with the blood banks. Amongst the supplies that our colleagues, yourselves, everyone here, we're in the field, the things that are needed. People still need blood, right?
Right, absolutely. And so people have not ceased to have or stopped having leukemia or lymphoma.
What is leukemia?
Or other cancers, a cancer of the bone marrow, of your white cells. People haven't stopped having breast cancer or prostate cancer or sickle cell or horrible bleeding events associated with accidents or surgical procedures. So those needs are still there.
So the question people have is it safe for me to help them?
It is absolutely safe. So I'm going to first call out to all of you guys who are out there who have been regular donors over the years. If you've been a regular blood donor over the years and you haven't been out because of the concerns, you've been following the precautions, it is safe to go out following the precautions that have been put in place. It is very safe to then go out and go to your blood center. You can call the blood center. They can give you a location near you so that they can set something up so that it's safe. I'll even give you another tip, something I recently did. I called the blood center and I said, hey, I want to donate and I want to bring 6 of my friends to donate. Can you come and set up a mobile location, one of your mobile drives, or do you have a system in place? The answer was yes. They're checking in patients individually. You won't be in there with anyone else. The person that you contact with will be masked and you have the protection gear, the personal protection equipment that we have in place to make sure that you're protected and they're protected. So when they're interviewing you and going through the screening process as well as going through the collection, you can get all of that done in less than 45 minutes from beginning to end. They're spacing out those times so that when another person comes, you're gone. So you never come in contact with another person. So again, calling out first to all of you guys who've been long-term donors, we still need you. The children of this city need you. The children of this state need you. The adults, your grandmothers, grandfathers, we need you. The people who are out there who have not donated before, consider doing it. It's something that you can do for your community. And remember, when you're doing it, you're saving a life. And you can still do so safely and still do so by observing all of the precautions that we have in place to protect ourselves and our community from coronavirus.
Thank you, Dr. Singleton. Again, she's an amazing hematologist and oncologist. That means she's a specialist in diseases and disorders of the blood and of cancer. Our next brilliant colleague and friend, we work together at Access Health. I'm glad Dr. Singleton brought up the new normal. We're all going to have to adjust to a new normal. I smile, but I want to say this with a very straight face. On the horizon is a new age. There's a new technology that's coming into healthcare. It's telemedicine. Everything that you see is about to change. But in order to get to the bright horizon on the other side, it's going to get a little rough. It's going to get a lot rough. So I want to make sure you're prepared and educated so you're not in your fight or flight response when things happen. My colleague and friend is Dr. Mark Allen Derry. He is an infectious disease specialist. He's one of the top in my circle of friends, and some would consider in the country and the world. He's fought Ebola. He's fought several of these before. So I wanted to bring not only credibility, but I wanted to bring facts straight from the specialist. He's an infectious disease doctor, Dr. Mark Allen Derry.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you very kindly. It really is an honor and a pleasure to be here today. And I just wanted to say a couple words, as I understand that ordinarily I'd be speaking to people that would be sitting in these seats, and now we're speaking to you directly at home. And this may feel odd, this may feel unusual, and to be honest, it kind of is. We are living our lives indoors. And I just want you to understand why we are living our lives indoors now. And the reason is that if you're looking at the news and you're seeing what's happening in Italy, for example, and what happened early on in China, what happened was there was this sudden spike of cases that happened all of a sudden. And what that did is that it overwhelmed the healthcare system. And so all 4 of us, I imagine tonight, are going to be talking pretty regularly of the importance of this idea of social isolation and maintaining social distancing. That's why we're all apart from one another. We're not appearing on screen together all at once. And so what this is referred to as flattening the curve. And I want to explain why we're doing that. Why are we trying to flatten the curve? And that is because if we exceed the maximum capacity of the healthcare system will crumble, much like what is happening in Italy. So we are asking people to stay at home and try to remain socially isolated and socially distant. Because for this virus, we do not have a vaccine, we don't have a cure. Hopefully at some point, there's multiple studies that are happening that are looking to see if there's any of these medications could potentially be helpful. But by flattening the curve, what we're doing is we're extending the amount of time as well that the disease process is going to continue circulating within our communities. And that's going to buy us some time as well to look for potential cures or potential medications. But the most important thing, as Doc Griggs was saying, is that this is a new normal right now. Please be patient with it. Please get used to it. We're going to be inside probably for weeks, if not some months moving forward. And it's cooperation with what you guys are doing that's going to help us as professionals be able to do our job. Doc Griggs?
Thank you, Dr. Derry. So we want to brace you and for you to be prepared. You're asking about flattening the curve. We don't know where the peak of the curve will be. The curve we're talking about is the pressure on the healthcare system, like he said, but as we're counting, it's hard to count. It's easy if you think about it, about trying to count the number of people in a room, but people keep coming in, no one will close the door. That's why we're asking you to stay at home. There are professionals, people that have won Nobel Prizes in the area, the glimmer of hope of public health and surveillance. And the World Health Organization governs the health of the world. And then they give it out to the countries. Then the CDC, which is our governing body for this, gives it to the states and then directly to the cities and into our homes and our behavior, and they dictate how healthcare is done. What we wanted to do was make sure that we got put in time, and I think we're doing well. We want to answer more questions than talking, and I think we laid a good platform. If not, we'll catch them in the questions. We have an OBGYN, a hematology oncologist, an infectious disease doctor, but more importantly, we have members of the community, church members, moms, new teachers, new disciplinarians, new home cooks, new PE teachers, you name it, we all have it. So if we can get to our questions, Pastor, I think this will be a good time.
All right, again, this is called Facts, Fear, Faith, and Family with Dr. Griggs. We want you to get the facts about this virus. So we want to thank Dr. Griggs and all of these health experts. I do have a couple of questions. First one to you, Dr. Leslie. It says, the question is it safe being pregnant to go out to the grocery store?
So that's a great question, and there's always a concern for being safe for yourself as well as for your unborn baby. We do know that as we are pregnant, our immune system is suppressed and we are at risk for getting the virus. The good news, we don't have a lot of data on the virus in pregnancy. The good news, though, that we do know is that for the women that have had the virus and were pregnant, the outcome has been not very bad. There have been a couple of preterm births. So with that in mind and thinking about the immune system being suppressed, you do want to make sure that if you do go out, that you are protecting yourself. A better option to go to the grocery store would be to have someone go for you. You may also want to consider having your groceries delivered. However, if you do have to go out, you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself. What does that mean? That means making sure that you're washing your hands, make sure that you're covering your cough, and making sure that you're keeping that social distance, making the physical distance, making sure that you are at least 6 feet away from another person.
Dr. Grace, you had a point there?
No, you asked a question about the grocery store. I want you to understand how real this is. I went to the grocery store yesterday and ended up spending over $100 because I realized everything, when you normally pick it up to look at it, I can't put it back on the shelf. This is a real adjustment for all of us. So I have all kinds of Gatorades, fruits I don't want, you name it. It's a new normal. We want you to pretend that everyone is contagious but you, and you don't want to get sick. And you don't want anyone you know to get sick, like the next person. So it's a new norm. Be careful what you pick up. You better get your glasses or something. Because
speaking of being careful, I don't know which one of you healthcare professionals want to answer this one. Should I avoid sex during the COVID-19?
Dr. Gillespie.
Guess that's me again. I'm
Dr. Griggs, Dr. Griggs easily turned it out over there.
You're not going to put this on me. I got enough people mad at me. No, sir.
It is safe to have sexual intercourse during this pandemic. As far as we know, the virus is not transmitted through bodily fluids. It is transmitted through respiratory droplets. So hopefully you are being a good Christian and you're having sex with your husband or your wife, and so you have already shared all of those other fluids. But other than that, there doesn't seem to be an increased risk of getting the virus through sexual transmission.
Dr. Derry, can you elaborate?
Sure. I also wanted to kind of double down on what Dr. Gillespie said, which is that the virus itself is not transmitted through any genital secretions. I would not at this time consider any new partners. So if you are looking to engage in intimate relationships, at this point I would do it with somebody who's a long-standing partner and not somebody who would be a new partner, somebody who's relatively new, somebody that you just recently met. And that's largely because when you're close and face-to-face and possibly involved in kissing and that sort of stuff that leads to sexual intercourse, that is the time that you could actually transmit the virus. But as Dr. Gillespie said, it's not transmitted through any genital secretions.
But don't, if you don't mind, I want to take it a step further. When you're saying monogamy, you mean someone that lives in the same house?
Yes, that's a good point, Dr. Griggs.
In the same house, not just a partner, but someone in the same house.
Right. I mean, this is somebody that you are ideally living with, and as Dr. Gillespie said, a spouse is an ideal person at that point, yes.
All right, great question, great. My wife, Elizabeth, you heard what the doctor said. She says, okay. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. All right, here's a good one, Dr. Grizz. How can I self-quarantine at home with other family members being there?
So I want to step in to define a term. Isolation is for people that are sick. Quarantine is that for people that occupy the same space with no symptoms. Now let me bring it home. Your baby has the chicken pox, and you have other kids now, or you don't know whether or not that you want them to get it or not. There's a debate there, but you put them, because they're most contagious, in the back room. They get their own food. You put it outside of the door. Everyone in the house, however, until they get the chicken pox, the old school remedies. My grandmother, if one of us got the chicken pox, then we all got the chicken pox, and to get it, quote unquote, get it over with. We would be quarantined even without the system and wouldn't be allowed to go outside unnecessarily so as to infect any other kids. Isolation is for someone that's most sick. If you have someone that is COVID-19 positive and is sick, like as with any other sickness you have them in their own room, separate from everybody else that doesn't have symptoms. If there's a risk of contamination or contracting the disease, then you confine yourself to your house, only leaving when necessary.
All right, next question. If you have had the virus and recovered, are you now immune from the virus?
Dr. Derry.
Thank you. That is a great question. And what that question is asking, if I can rephrase it, is reinfection possible? And initially we thought that reinfection may have been possible because we did see some isolated cases of reinfection. But at this point, Wuhan has... The Chinese experience had something like 80,000 cases right now, and they haven't had any new cases in about 7 days, and we have not seen any new cases. So I think at this point that it may be fair that the reinfected cases that we did see were isolated. We refer to them as outliers, but the majority of the population is very likely going to be immune to this strain. There are 2 strains of this virus, however, and we don't know if immunity to this so-called L strain would confer immunity to the S strain.
Great. So I want to, again, say, I want you to get used to hearing I don't know. Everything that we know about viruses in our human species, we don't have an answer for. We're all finding out together. The only thing that you know is how to take care of yourself. So if you're asked to take care of yourself at home, you need to use your judgment on how you would take care of your child and use it for yourself. But get used to hearing you don't know from the science side. We're trying to find out, and we're asking you to stay home so the scientific process that we've come up to contain this can take place.
Another question just got on the internet. Are there any new symptoms of COVID-19 other than the ones you've been talking about the last 2 weeks? Are there any new symptoms?
Now, that question, I want to add a caveat. Any new symptoms in human beings that we know of that we can state as a general rule that we can 100% say are new symptoms to start looking for? Dr. Derry.
So thank you. That is an excellent question. And as I'm watching some of the questions roll by here on the chat here, one of the ones that keeps coming up, and certainly was a surprise, I think, to all of us on Monday morning when we woke up to that New York Times article that talks specifically about the loss of smell and the loss of taste. That is now being considered a potential indicator for the coronavirus. This is something relatively new that we're just beginning to understand as well. And I think what we're seeing as well is that there have been some cases where people are having some gastrointestinal distress, so they may be using the restroom, or they may be having stools, and when their stools are very, very loose, more loose than usual, and they're using the bathroom a little bit more frequently. And that's not uncommon. We saw something like that with the previous coronavirus outbreak that we saw in 2003 with the SARS.
So what he's saying is, I want people to be clear. What you're hearing from the New York Times, a lot of this happens behind the scenes, and as things come out, as their scientists are counting, and it's part of the process, like with clinical trials, you're counting new symptoms. We're trying to figure out the behavior of this new virus, and we're documenting symptoms. We're new lefts, new rights. But it's not necessarily, we can't say that it's exactly indicative of the virus yet because we're still studying and counting. So when you hear about new symptoms, we definitely want you to make a note of that, but we don't want everyone thinking that this is something that they have to be afraid of. Dr. Singleton, am I correct?
Yeah, I think what's most important is that you recognize if you have any concern, that you do have people that you can reach out to talk to ask questions. And so you don't have to memorize everything. Again, you do have people that may have no symptoms. You have people that may have some new symptoms. You may have people that have standard symptoms. Everything that's a fever may not necessarily be coronavirus, but I do think it's important that we recognize it's important for us to maintain all of the social distancing and the asks of everyone that's here, or everyone in our community, so that we can keep everyone safe.
Dr. Singleton, while you're up there, here's a question about blood. I would like to give blood, but could I be exposed to the virus going out?
So when you go out to give blood, and I want to, again, highly encourage you to go out to give blood, I think it should start off with a phone call. You should contact the blood center and let them know that you have an interest in coming out to donate. They probably want to make sure that they know that you're coming so that they can schedule the times so that you can have like an independent intake process, and so that you can be a part of the blood donation process where all the universal precautions will be in place to keep you safe. So you can't just show up because they want to make sure that you are safe, but please give them a call in advance, and yes, it would be very safe to go ahead and make the donation.
Great, great. Dr. Gillespie, the question that comes on Facebook, what if you're breastfeeding and become exposed at work? No symptoms at this time, do I continue breastfeeding my baby?
So that's a great question. So you do not need to discontinue breastfeeding. We do know that breast milk is the best nutrition that you can give your baby, and the Centers for Disease Control, as well as the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, recommends for women, even if they are positive or presumptive positive, not just exposed, they do recommend that you consider breastfeeding your baby. It is a decision between the mom, her family, and her healthcare provider. We know from the data that we have so far that COVID-19 is not spread in breast milk, so you don't have to worry about concerns of giving your baby the virus through breast milk. However, if you are positive or you're presumptive positive, you do want to make sure you're protecting your baby by washing your hands for 20 seconds. You want to make sure you're wearing a surgical mask, because remember, respiratory droplets are one of the biggest ways that we do transmit the virus. But if you've been exposed and you're not positive, you're safe to continue breastfeeding as you have before.
Dr. Griggs, what if you tested and it comes back negative, but you're beginning to feel fatigue and coughing more? Should you have another test?
So I want Dr. Derry to answer that one. But while I want to interject real quick, I just realized if you're on your computer, you can open up another browser. I want to emphasize again, I want you to go to your Google search box, type in CDC coronavirus self-checker. Go to the light blue box and follow the instructions. It's a tool that you can use at home, and then a lot of the myths and questions you have, the most current and updated information will be on the cdc.gov site. That site, the self-checker is a part of it. Dr. Derry.
That is such a great question, Deborah. And the question is, if you are tested and it comes back negative, but you are feeling fatigued and coughing more, should you have another test? At this point, I would just get the test once, and if it's negative, we are aware that the test does have some false negatives. So the test isn't perfect. So if a positive is positive, that's referred to as specificity. That's great. We know that you have positive. For those that have negative tests but still feel ill, like they may have it, you probably do have it, and it's just that the test isn't able to actually measure it. So continue to stay home and do 14 days isolation, and also importantly, please take medicine to help with your symptoms. Tylenol and ibuprofen or naproxen is excellent for fever reduction, and then also a cough suppressant. Please, if you're coughing, the number one thing I can tell you is cough doesn't go away by itself. You have to treat your cough. Something like Mucinex or some sort of cough suppressant works great, but you have to take it around the clock. That's how that works.
So I just want to hop in to ask a quick question, kind of piggybacking on that question, because I've had this posed to me a couple of times even today. So if I'm at home and I have fever and I have cough and I'm feeling lousy, and in addition to that, I know that I've had some social exposures, recently. But I don't have any shortness of breath necessarily. I think that I can maintain this at home. Do I have to go out and get a coronavirus test? Or should I just presume that I have coronavirus and treat my symptoms, treat my cough, as you mentioned, and then go out if I start to feel worse, or if I develop shortness of breath? So what do you do?
Sure, Dr. Singleton, that's such a great question, because it does lead to something that we are starting to shift into, which is at this point here in New Orleans, where we have the highest incidence of cases. That, in other words, we are seeing
Incidents. Come on, man.
I'm just
saying, bro. Come on, bro.
That's on a roll, man. I said in other words.
Come on, ain't no other words.
I don't see anybody.
We know you can read. Oh, you read a good big word. Come on. What you mean?
We have the highest incidence. Do you want to explain incidence?
I want you to explain it.
We have the highest incidence.
My grandma said, if you can't explain it, you don't know it. Come on.
Which is the number of new cases, right? So we have these high numbers. Now I lost.
Yeah, you messed
No,
up.
we have the highest number of new cases. And so what's happening is we can assume now it's spread throughout the community. So if you feel like you do have it, a test isn't going to really do anything.
Yes.
The best thing to do is actually to stay home and not go out so as to possibly and
That's what I want.
inadvertently infect other individuals. Stay home. But there is a time to access the healthcare system, and specifically when you start feeling short of breath, if you see a loved one talking incoherently, if perhaps maybe they're having seizures, if you see possibly blue lips, that is definitely the time that you need to be accessing the healthcare system. In fact, probably just a little before it.
So from there, I want to talk to you. I alluded to earlier that we have gotten to be so busy that when we're told to wait on our test results, when we're told that we're positive and to take care of ourselves, we freeze, and it can have potentially fatal results. Now, I mentioned our tool bag. We have gems and tools in our bag, and they're right there with us now. So I'd ask Dr. Gillespie and Dr. Singleton to take off their hats as doctors, bring it back as an in, but they're moms. What do people need to do? Now, I can tell you what my grandma would do to me, but y'all don't want to put onions in your socks for fever. Oh, that's funny? That's funny? I want them to talk to you as moms. What should people be doing if they feel bad at home, and when should they know to go to the hospital? Either of the two of you.
Yeah, I think we can both kind of hop in on this. And it's really not a silly question to ask. You know, it's something that a lot of people don't necessarily know the answer to, but just kind of take it back to the basics because this just seems so huge, right? And so I was about to say, but I just
Say it, Mama.
I just want to explain this one quick concept about inflammation, which I was talking about a little bit earlier. And so just because you have a fever doesn't necessarily mean that something awful or bad is happening. It is a sign, perhaps, that you may have something viral, you may have something bacterial, and in this case, you may have coronavirus. But just because you have the fever doesn't mean we have to pounce on it right away and go straight to the medicine cabinet to find the Tylenol or the ibuprofen. So if I have a kid at home, and I have 3 of them at home, and they've developed a fever, but they're still kind of hanging out, playing video games, still drinking, still eating well. I may
Drinking regular fluids.
Drinking regular fluids, yeah. Drinking regular fluids. I may just let that ride, right? I'll let it ride. However, if that fever is getting higher, and now they're slumping over and not feeling good and unable to drink the way that they should, or unable to sleep the way that they should, now as a mom, I'm probably going to step in and intervene.
So I want you to say that again, because there are a lot of people out there. We say we're specifically looking for a fever of 100.4, but there are no thermometers on the shelves. How do we know?
I have something for that too. So someone called me the other day and said, we don't have any thermometers, what can we do? I said, well, listen, we're going to take it back old school. So when we didn't have a thermometer at the house, or the 5 that we had were broken, we've been in that situation,
right? We did break them and play with the mercury.
I touched their hands, and I touched the soles of their feet. And so if their hands, the inside, the palm of your hand is hot, you know that that's a fever, probably more than 101. You know that that's a real fever. If you're just warm to touch, but your hands, the inside of your hand is still cool, you don't have necessarily a real fever. The other thing is when someone is sleeping and there's a fever, instead of that slow, you may hear them kind of go, they're breathing a little faster because the fever is sort of making them do that. So old school, touch the soles of the feet, touch the palms of the hand. If they're hot, you know for sure that you're dealing with a fever.
Somebody hung out with their grandma or their mom or something, right? What you got, Mama Gillespie? What you got? Y'all thought y'all couldn't do nothing? Now you see.
Well, I'm going to speak to working moms right now, because we are taking on new roles because our kids are at home with us. And we are teaching them.
Gym teacher.
I have a 7-year-old, and I'm teaching 1st grade. I thought I knew how to do math. Clearly, I don't, because they're doing it a different way. But learning how to teach, and also in the middle of that, I'm doing virtual visits for my patients. So this is a time where we are all taking on different roles and doing different things in our lives, learning how to work from home, again, having your kids with you and trying to teach them. Take some time for yourself. This is a time, if you're stressed, then your immune system is going to be suppressed, and you are going to feel bad, and you're more likely to get sick. And then just another thing to remember in terms of fever and some of the other things that we're talking about, as Tammy said, don't forget that if you have a fever, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have COVID-19. Don't forget it's still flu season. There are still things that are going on right now, colds and other things. It doesn't always mean that you have coronavirus, but most of all, make sure you're taking time to take care of yourself. It is a whole new game when you are a working mom and you are a teaching mom at the same time.
And one more practical thing about fever, too, is if you get to a point and you have a child or someone in the house and there is a fever, you've touched the palms of the hand, you check the soles of the feet, and it's a fever, and they've done that thing where it's the whole kind of slumping over and sleepy, and I can't drink, and I'm looking terrible. I did this actually even though I'm a doctor, I did this with my first baby. I totally lost it.
She's telling all the business.
I totally lost it the first time she had a fever. I was so embarrassed because the doctor on the other end of the line, my colleague, says, okay, did you give her a dose? Have you tried a dose of Tylenol? Or have you tried a dose of ibuprofen yet? And I was like, no, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do that. And so he said, if she perks up, sits up and starts drinking after you give the dose of Tylenol or the dose of ibuprofen, you know that for the most part you're still okay. And I think that that's a good rule of thumb to have, that once you have that fever and somebody starts really kind of clumping on you, if you give the dose of Tylenol or if you give the dose of ibuprofen, whatever it is you have at home, and I do want to say, even though with those recommendations to stay away from ibuprofen and use Tylenol, don't panic if you don't have it at home. It's kind of hard to find right now on the shelves. You may not have had it already. Use what you have when you have to use it. But if they perk up, you know you're okay.
So thank you. Thank you. So I did that intentionally, y'all. A couple things. Everybody listens. I'm having a hard time. I had an exchange at a grocery store with somebody. Excuse me, mister, I don't care. We're going to die of something. As if they're not paying attention. And I'm like, well, ma'am, it doesn't have to be right now. This is serious. But most importantly, I wanted you to see that the healthcare providers in front of you and that we're here are people. And they're literally putting their lives on the line, on the front line to protect you. So if you know someone in healthcare, it's okay to call and ask, what do you need? What do you want? If you've hoarded something, if they need something that you've hoarded out of panic, right? I had to find Kleenex. Too much, TMI. Yeah, well, I'm just saying, if you have something that they need, even if it's to check on their kids, any way that you can possibly help out, check on them. Follow the lead of Franklin Avenue and adopt a hospital. New Orleans East Hospital is a great hospital to support. I'd say Access Health, we'll say Ochsner, any of them that you can actually support, because these people have the same fears that you do. And the supplies are short, but we're staying on the field. Think about it. That's why we're asking you to stay at home so we can stay at work. The ibuprofen thing I want to address. I've been addressing it over and over. That was the result of someone dipping their nose in the business that they didn't have no business. It was a misspeak on a last-ditch effort on a patient in combination with azithromycin, and they actually came back and retracted their statement, and I can post it on my page. The World Health Organization basically doubled back on people using ibuprofen. Leave it in your toolbox. We have everything that we need in the community.
That leads me to a great commercial at this point, Dr. Griggs, before I answer the next question. Franklin Avenue has adopted New Orleans East Hospital, which is 2 exits from us, and there are resources that are desperately needed. I'm sure not only by New Orleans East Hospital, all the hospitals here in the city. Resources like surgical masks, N95 respiratory masks, bleach wipes, gloves, particularly XL gloves, shoe covers, stethoscopes, hand sanitizer, disposable isolation gowns, whatever you have hoarding in your house that you got at the beginning of this virus, our healthcare providers need it. They need it. Like Dr. Grid just said, they're human just like you and me, and they need these things. So if you're part of our family here, Franklin Avenue, you're in New Orleans East area, a business owner, a member, please be sure to drop those items, extra items off New Orleans East Hospital every day from Monday through Friday from 9 to 4 o'clock. There's a desperate need for them, and they would really, really be appreciated. All right, now back to the next question, Dr. Griggs. What about handling money? This is something we do daily. Money is a carrier of all kind of germs.
So let me first of all say, we can talk about fomites and all that. Hold on. You ain't supposed to be nowhere where you spending cash anyway. Now, the decision is whether or not you should cash or a card. It's safer and more sanitary to use your card, as sanitary as you can be. But there's a thing. Now she had the doctor hat on. Dr. Singleton came in and said, fomites. I'm going to let her start and explain what, I ain't talking about $4 or 4 cents, fomites. I'll let her explain what it is, but you're supposed to be in the house and you can get your groceries delivered or use that card.
I'm a self-proclaimed germaphobe, so it's kind of one of my favorite things, sorry to say. And my infectious disease colleague is probably laughing at me and my germaphobeness. But I will put a practical spin on that. And that is, I went out to grab some pizzas because I burned the red beans. Yeah, on Monday. Stress, wasn't watching the pot. It was on too high. When you make it high, it makes it creamy the way you want. Yeah, anyway. So I didn't pay attention, burned the beans, and went to buy some pizza. And the staff at the place, they were asking me did they want me to wipe off the key, or did I want them to wipe off the keypad for me and, take all these extra precautions? And I just looked at them and I went, no, I'm okay. Do you know why? Because whatever I've just touched, immediately I'm going to clean my hands before I go touching anything on my vehicle. And this germaphobe has done that long before, the whole COVID-19 thing. I don't mind touching on, any of those things, because what I'm going to try to do is not touch my face, not rub my eyes, not put my fingers in my mouth, not eat anything, and I'm not going to go touching all the general surfaces that I kind of call the fomite. It's the surface that carries the bacteria, your cell phone. How often are you cleaning your cell phone? So you've cleaned your hands, you've scoured everything, you went and put gloves on, you're being all safe, everything's great. But that cell phone that you've had all day, you've touched everything, picked it up, touched your face, pumped gas,
You know
gone
she's
everywhere.
serious. She got that mama face on it, just
God,
nasty.
yeah,
is what
just
it is.
nasty.
Yeah.
Nasty. So, so you have to be just kind of crazy about just keeping your hands clean. So even if you just keep your hands clean.
Dr. Derek, give me some of them big words.
Right. So I just wanted to address the money thing. And Dr. Singleton is right, and I'm a germaphobe, and I'm an infectious diseases doctor, right? Which is appropriate, right? I don't know of an infectious disease doctor who isn't.
Yeah.
But just to talk about the money thing, because it is really important. Money does carry bacteria. So anytime you touch money, you should always wash your hands afterwards. But there is no evidence that money carries this particular virus, and that's a really important point. So just like Dr. Singleton said, that's okay. You can go ahead and touch money. You can engage in that transaction. Just please wash your hands after you touch the money, and you can be very clear to know that the virus does not transmit on dollar bills or what have you.
Now, y'all know good and well that y'all not 6 feet from the cashier trying to hand nobody no money. Y'all know better than that. Stay home, use your card, and back up now.
All right. If you work face-to-face with the public every day, should you wear a face mask, smock, and gloves?
Dr. Derry.
So I think that's a great question, and it's a very fair question. Certainly, when I see patients, although I am doing it virtual, just like my colleagues are here, but if they are coming into the office, I am wearing at least a mask, an N95 mask. For those individuals that are cashiers right now, those individuals that are facing the public right now, you are
Cafeteria, food?
Right, yeah, you are doing an amazing job, and you are the heroes and the unsung heroes right now with respect to this particular virus, because I know that it is impossible for you to wear masks or for you to wear gloves or for you to wear smocks, and that's just that's the situation. The other thing is that those materials at this point should really be relegated or left to healthcare professionals. We are at a critical shortage of those sorts of things, and they are really needed in the hospitals. As you've probably been seeing in the articles, that we are coming up soon to possibly running out of those materials. So if you're one of those people who went and bought a box of gloves or bought a bunch of masks,
can donate
please, yes, donate it to
Please
New
donate
Orleans
it to
East
your local
Hospital,
hospital.
or please donate to a clinic. But we really do need it. It is important for us to be able to do our jobs. Doc?
Thanks, Doc.
Are there any additional precautions to consider if you have children with asthma?
So
Yeah.
we're going to let Dr. Singleton
Pediatrician
and
answer.
Mama Singleton
Yeah,
come in.
the mom pediatrician answer. So first of all, the absolute first thing that you should do is you need to make absolutely certain that you have the medications that have been prescribed for your child. You need to make sure you have those and that you are giving those as directed. Try not to miss them, whatever that regimen is, stay on top of it to try to keep that asthma under control. Because a child has asthma or an adult has asthma, is that an underlying condition? Absolutely. And so if you have a respiratory illness, a virus or a bacteria, whatever it is that can get into the lungs or into the chest, and you already have a condition of the lungs, so can it be worse, or can your symptoms be exaggerated? Absolutely. So again, first of all, starting with your regimen, make sure you keep that tight and checked and really just making sure that you're still exercising those precautions. And I want to add one more thing about exercising those precautions and how people
Yep.
don't think that some people don't think it's important. So if you came in contact, you break those precautions. You came in contact with someone who's been out and you don't know what they've been doing. 5 people at their house could have corona. You have no idea.
She sounds like she's talking to her kids right now.
Just the other day. Yeah, right. So you have no idea what was happening there. So now, unbeknownst to you, you've been exposed. So when we go out to the lakefront and we're congregating, when we went to the beach and we were congregating, so we're now being exposed in an uncontrolled environment to multiple people, and we have no idea necessarily what the history is. So if you have a child with asthma, especially trying to protect your space and really follow the precautions or cautions that have been put in place for us to follow or that we've been asked to follow, that's the absolute best thing that you can do to keep your child safe.
So you brought up a great point, and Doc, you can help me with this if I need to go deeper. This virus we know is a respiratory virus. It starts in the lungs and sadly ends in the lungs. It targets the lungs. So any condition that would compromise your lung tissue or your body from protecting itself, which includes smoking. And I want Dr. Derry, I want to stop here because I want to I'm talking to our weed smokers and I'm talking to our smokers. Let's talk about smoking.
So,
Why it's a risk factor.
So the reason why smoking is a risk factor is that the virus, once it gets into the lungs, and it gets very, very deep into the lungs, into the spaces that are referred to as the air sacs or the alveoli.
You did pretty good.
Yeah. I didn't want you to beat up on me again, all right? I thought about it first, all right? So once it gets into those air sacs, there are these little targets that it goes for, and those targets are referred to as ACE2. And you may see this because I'm starting to see more and more of this, even in the lay public literature. And so these ACE2 proteins is what the virus attaches to, and then that's the key that allows it to enter the cell. And so smokers have more of these ACE2 proteins in their air sacs. And so one of the reasons why smoking is considered to be a risk factor is that you're able to get more viruses into those cells, which means that you have a much higher viral load, which could be potentially critical.
Fatal, yeah. Good.
What about vaping?
What about vape? Anything that you can
I
take
think
into
the
the
studying
lungs?
has been showed to be smokers. And
Smokers.
And while we're talking about smokers,
Right now.
one of the reasons why we see that men are disproportionately affected 2 to 1 with respect to being critically ill and also dying is that research came out of China. And in China, something like 60 to 70% men smoke and about 10% of women smoke. So we think that actually smoking is what we refer to as a confounder. In other words, it was something that if we remove the effects of smoking, would there be more of a 1-to-1 equal ratio? And we're going to get more of that information from Italy and certainly from our experience here.
You're going deep. You're going deep. Thank you, Doc. Thank you. You're going
All
deep there.
here's
That was good. You're going deep
what,
now.
What can be used if you do not have a surgical mask or N95 mask? And also along with that, should I wear a mask while cutting grass?
So, first of all, if you have this equipment, I'm going to go back to, if you're at home with your family, you shouldn't have all this stuff stored up at home. We got people that need it on the front lines. The thing is that we know, and Dr. Derry, this will be, I can't do an example because I don't have any hair, but the average strand of hair is 0.75 microns. This virus is 0.1 micron, am I correct?
No, it's 75
75 micron.
So the virus
It's
is 0.1 micron, and a strand of hair is 75 microns.
So I told you I don't have much hair, so this is all memory. 75 microns and 0.1 microns. That's ridiculously small. If you want to wear a mask, the problem with masks, though they make you feel at home, they make you feel safe, we're still touching our face. And we're passing along those fomites that Dr. Singleton was talking about. But the reason for the appeal, and I need to say this, and I say this over and over again, the appeal for the healthcare providers is not a science thing. Basically, if it's not an N95 mask, the surgical mask is like water passing through a filter, Doc. But before you start, I need to caveat. This is not a science thing with our providers on the front line. It's a supply thing. We're doing the best we have. They use face masks to help protect themselves to stay on the front lines. Now you can science them up if you want.
Thank you. What Doc Griggs was saying was that the purpose of the surgical masks are really were invented for the surgeon so that when she is looking down into her surgical field and she's talking, she's not, there's no respiratory droplets getting out. That's the purpose. It wasn't meant to protect any viruses from getting in. And what Doc Griggs was saying is that the virus is so small, it's 0.1 microns, and the thread, a human hair, sample of human hair is,
He's still got hair. He can do that.
75 microns.
My
You see, that's
examples don't work.
I got a nice dude too. Thank you very much. Thank
He
you.
got a nice little
I
flute,
really have it going on
little
here.
flop.
So when you look at the stitching on a mask, that 0.1 micron, it will literally just go right through. And it's the equivalent of using a chain link fence to hold back rushing waters. It doesn't make sense. But I do know, and I think I understand where this question is coming from. It's because last week the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention did make some recommendations about using handkerchiefs or using scarves or bandanas as well. At this point, just please stay inside. If you are going to go outside, social distancing is really the only thing that you need. As long as you're not close to other people, you don't need to be wearing masks outside at all.
I do
So-
have an example question real quick about
I want to
about
clarify what he just
Go
said.
ahead, and then
there.
I'll ask my
That
question.
was taken out of that was taken out of context. Again, it was a science thing. I'm not negating what you're saying. It was a science thing. Again, it was a supply thing rather, not a science thing. They're basically we're trying to say if that's all you have because we're short on the supplies. A lot of the supplies that we need are made in China and Italy. So there's a supply thing. So we want you to do the best you can with what you have until the supplies can catch up.
Right, and I just want to double down on what Doc Griggs was saying.
Yeah.
These things are made in China and in Italy,
That's
which
why.
are locked down right now. So these factories are not producing these products right now. Dr. Singleton?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, so someone asked me this question just the other day. So there are some people who are in homes and maybe one person really thinks that they have coronavirus. But there are other family members who have now been exposed, but then there's also a very vulnerable family member who's in the home. So someone who's had a transplant or someone who's 90 years old. And so you still have to help them to get food, or to bathe, and so if you're one of the exposed people, but you don't have any symptoms, you may still want to protect, grandma. And maybe since you have to get so close to her, you don't want to necessarily breathe on her.
Sure.
So those may be instances,
That's
what I
such a
mean,
good
that
point.
you may.
That's such a good point. Dr. Singleton, I just want you to make that point again because I think that's so important,
Yeah.
please.
So like, again, the scenario could be, there are 5 of us living in this house. My brother is down with fever, can't, get out the bed hardly to use the bathroom, but he's stable. I'm bringing something to drink. And so we're gonna work to take care of brother, but then at the same time, we have our grandmother in the house who's 95 years old, and we want to keep her safe. So we're all now staying in the house. We're not going to leave for 14 days. But when I go in, and we're going to try to have the same person, by the way, go in to take care of the sick person. And whoever that person is not going in to take care of grandma. So you sort of have to think about it and do the best you can. And if you don't have a mask, I would put on something to cover your face in that instance.
So that's my point, and I want you to feel empowered. You have to do the best you can in this instance. What people need to understand is the reason that we're going to tell you we don't know, or we're going to tell you to do the best you can right now, is because we've never experienced anything like this worldwide. It's from the very, very top that we don't have supplies, and until things open up, we're having to make do and do the best we can. And again, remember that 80% of us, we're going to be okay on the other side of it, but 80% of us will have no symptoms, mild symptoms, or none at all.
Last 2 questions, and then we're going to close out with each of these health professionals giving their final minute or so what they want to say, and then we'll be back. I appreciate them so much. They're very busy, and for them to come here to give us this time, you cannot buy this at their office, I tell you, but I just appreciate them so very much because we want to lower the curve. And Dr. Griggs contacted me about doing this. Excellent. Somebody. The last these 2 questions, then each of them will come back with a closing statement. I'll ask both questions together, and then y'all can respond. If you're a working parent that needs help with your kids, is it okay to send them to daycare or bring one person into the home daily to help care for them? And then the final question, my husband has COPD, body ache, dry mouth, but no fever. Should I go get him tested?
So I'll kind of power answer that first question. No daycare right now, absolutely not. And the second part of that question, would be if you bring someone into the home, you need to be cautious about who that someone is, and then when they go home, what their exposures are. After some of this has been lifted, you may be able to be in that environment, but it's trying to control the environment. So if that person is going home and they're not around a bunch of people, they stay at home alone, then that may be a safe environment. And as long as they're, again, continuing to exercise those precautions. So it's going to require you to ask a lot of additional questions to leave your child at home with someone when they're coming in and out of the home.
Dr.
And the
Derek?
second part about the husband with COPD?
I'll do the COPD. My husband has COPD, body aches, and dry mouth, but no fever. Should I get him tested? The answer there is, again, no. There's no need for testing. The issue here, though, is more importantly, because there was another question that came up that somebody was having persistent cough. You have to treat cough. Cough begets cough. The more you cough, the more you cough. So you have to really get it, kind of nip it in the bud, if you will, and use cough suppressants to do that.
Doc, not to take much time, but I want you to tell people how the cough begetting cough, how it makes them more susceptible. What happens? What does cough do to the respiratory tissue, and how does it relate to the virus, why you want to take the cough suppressant?
Right. So the reason why I'm so aggressive for treating cough is because if you start coughing, at my house, we have cough suppressant, and the minute there's a cough, everybody starts taking cough suppressants. And the reason is that when you cough, your lungs are on both sides right here in your chest, you get a little irritation, and then it sends a signal to the brain saying, hey, I'm irritated, and the brain goes, oh, okay, well, let me respond. But the brain's response is only one thing, and that is to do more cough. Sorry. I had it on it. Only my wife can get through when it's on silence like that.
Were you in trouble? You didn't answer that phone?
She heard me coughing. She was like, did you take that Teflon pearls? Where are the Teflon pearls? There's a lot of Teflon pearls at the house.
That Tessin.
So the more you cough, the more you cough. So once the brain sends that signal saying, hey, cough, and then you cough, and then you irritate a little bit more of the lungs, and then you irritate more of the lungs, and you irritate more. And if you're a smoker, oof, that's double down. That's even worse.
What does the virus do? How does that relate? Irritating more, how does that relate? I want them to know how it relates to the virus. How does it make them, what does the virus do with this irritated tissue?
Well, it's able to
Get into the
tissue. It damages. There's this thing called cilia that help beat it out. The more damage you do, there's nothing to push it out. It's like kids jumping in the pool when the back door to the neighborhood pool is open. They jump in and jump in and jump in, and they can take over your body.
And speaking of pools, let's just say really quickly, if there's a pool in the place that you're living, kids should not be swimming in pools right now. Let's just be very clear. But what Doc Griggs was saying was a very important point, is that the virus causes a pneumonia, and after it causes a pneumonia, the place that there was the pneumonia, it actually creates there's a space of, it kind of gets rid of all the protective effects, and it takes a couple weeks for those protective little cilia, these hair-like things that are going to grow back, and in those couple weeks there is a chance that you could get a bacterial pneumonia, so you really have to be very careful with that.
Which corresponds with the 14 days that we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I want to personally thank these doctors for coming, and I hope you've been helped. I'm going to ask each of them to come back and take a minute or so with any closing comments they would like to make. Dr. Gillespie will come, and then Dr. Singleton, Dr. Derry, and then Dr. Griggs will close out, and then I'll be back with the final announcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Franklin Nice. I'll be brief. I just want to say I'm happy that I was able to join tonight, and hopefully we have been able to answer some questions. Again, we want to be cautious and we want to be careful, but we don't want to be afraid, and we hope to continue to arm you with the right information. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of sensationalized information out there, so make sure that the information that you're getting is good information.
Thank you.
And I'll close out by saying remember that we still need to take care of each other. And so part of us taking care of each other could mean that you would go out and donate blood. It's safe to do so. Contact the blood center. Support the most vulnerable people in our community. The blood shelves are almost empty. And what a terrifying thing if we had a loved one and they needed a transfusion now and it wasn't there. So save a life, get out and save blood. And I just want to echo, get your information from great sources. Stop watching TV all day long. Pick your time, morning and evening, and then have a schedule.
Mama
All right,
get you on a
thanks, guys.
schedule, huh? Mama.
I just wanted to say two things. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. Two things, really. There is no treatment, there's no vaccine, there is no cure. The only thing that we have are these non-pharmaceutical interventions. In other words, stay home. Please stay home. And the second thing, I want you to consider including 4 groups of people in your prayers moving forward. Please consider those that are in nursing homes because they're at risk. Please consider those that are in the carceral system because they're at risk. Please consider those that are in detention centers, in ICE centers, in immigration centers because they are also at risk. And please also consider the homeless that are living in homeless shelters because they're at risk as well. Again, thank you so much for having me here.
So I want to thank you for allowing me to be here again, Pastor. Thank you for allowing me into your screens. I'm going to do the best I can to bring you the best that I have. If you I understand that if I don't know now, promise you I will try to find out using the best sources. If you can do me a favor right now, if you haven't done it already, go in your Google search box, type in CDC Coronavirus Self-Checker. CDC Coronavirus Self-Checker, that's a weapon in your toolbox. It standardizes the information from which we're all taking, so we're all considering, all using the same language. Every morning, I want you to get up and I want you to breathe, relax, check on yourself, look for your signs of dry cough, fever of 100.4, and shortness of breath. And if you don't have a thermometer, you know, Mama Tammy and Dr. Singleton, the pediatrician, and Mama Tammy told us to feel them feet, feel the bottom of your feet, and feel your hands, and remember those things that you said. And the last thing is step back, start your day. When you call to check on yourself, call your mom, call your grandmother. I got to call my mom again when I leave because I'm sure my phone is blown up because she's worried about you. But understand you're not alone. I'll be here. We'll be here. We're in this together. Check on your health providers, see what they need. Thank you, Pastor.
Amen. Let's give them a hand from home. Amen. Thank God for them. Facts, faith, and family with Dr. Griggs. Thank you so very much, Dr. Griggs. Thank you, Dr. Tammy. Thank you, Dr. Leps. Thank you, Dr. Derek. Appreciate all of you. I want to thank our AV team for making this possible. And we're just trying to lower the curve. Trying to lower the curve and do our part. Thank you, Franklinites, and thank you, all of you. I'm sure there were 3,000 last week. I'm sure there are more this week watching, and we will continue to do our part. Again, remember, our hospitals need your help. They desperately need your help with. So if you're able, surgical masks, N95, respiratory masks, bleach wipes, gloves, XL, shoe covers, testicles, hand sanitizer, disposable isolation gloves, whatever you can contribute. New Orleans East Hospital, any hospital that you're close to, if you have that at your home, please bring it because we desperately need it. Thank you, A.B. Creed. Thank you, Franklin Avenue. Lord, we thank you and we praise you for all that has happened on this day. Thank you for this great information that has been shared. Thank you for these brothers and sisters, these doctors, God, who taken time out of their very busy schedule to share facts to the people who are watching on tonight. Watch over them as they depart from this place. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. Good night. See you Sunday morning, 9 o'clock. Amen. God bless.
Come on, we worshiping all night tonight, so I hope you're comfortable. Come on, let me hear you. Let me hear you. You make me happy. You make me whole. And you take the pain away. I'm so in love with you. You make me happy. You make me whole. You take the pain away. I'm so in love with you. Come on, say that with us. You make me happy. Come on, say you make me whole. That's it. Say you take the pain away. Now tell them I'm so in love.